now he had kind of a sad series of interviews on cable, and the whole thing made me feel sad. I mean, it's, I guess, funny in a way, but sad. It was sad. Joining us now, someone he actually mentioned, and he said if Roger Stone were in the White House giving Trump advice, he'd be up 55% approval. Well, I don't doubt that. Only if I were in there working with him. Roger Stone. How you doing, Roger? How's it going?
That may be the one thing Sam said that was absolutely correct.
What's happening? Like, I don't think I ever ran across him, which is odd because I pretty much knew everybody in there, but I don't think I ever knew him. Tell me why this may be relevant or why it's just a total media sideshow.
Well, it was certainly riveting to watch. Kind of like a car crash.
Yeah.
Sam is very much his own man, marches to his own drummer, certainly not acting at my behest or direction. He is a brilliant writer and researcher, but he fell out with the Trump campaign. And evidently, according to what his lawyer told my attorneys, among the many, many, many questions they asked him was whether I had met with Julian Assange of WikiLeaks during the 2016 election. The answer to that, which I can give you now right here on the Laura Ingraham Show, is no. My passport, which I showed the relevant pages to the Daily Caller, shows I didn't leave the country at all during 2016, and I've never met Julian Assange. Of course, I don't buy into the deep state claim that he's a Russian asset or that WikiLeaks is a Russian front. I think he's a journalist, a courageous journalist, and I point out that nothing that he's published has been questioned in terms of its authenticity or its accuracy. So once again, an attempt to distract from the content of those devastating disclosures by creating a controversy of where they came from. I can also tell you I have no idea, I had no advance notice of the source or the content or the exact timing of those disclosures. But this seemed to offend Sam. They also asked him, I guess, many questions about Steve Bannon, Paul Manafort, Kellyanne Conway, Hope Hicks, Corey Lewandowski, and so on. So, the only thing I can imagine here is that he just was overwhelmed by this. I have no knowledge or evidence of any collusion. I don't think Sam does either. That all sounded like speculation to me. I don't know on what he bases that speculation.
Well, I think that one thing we discover here is that the Mueller investigation it's like any other type of litigation, civil or criminal, frankly, except now there's potential jail time at the other side or even an impeachment. Is that they will look under every rock. If you're a good lawyer, you put a big murder board on the wall and you go through person after person and you have dots connected to this one knew this one met this one, and you do it a series of kind of high class sticky notes, and you try to put it all together, and then you switch this card with that card. You're like, okay, that guy's not really relevant, but you do go through the list of players methodically. That's what I used to do when I worked at Skadden in major litigation, and it's a complicated, long process. But to me, what he said about what Mueller is after, I don't necessarily doubt what he said about what he's after, but I don't know. He doesn't seem to have any unique insight either, as far as I could tell.
Well, I think the media emphasis on this is an attempt to distract from the fact that we now know that the FBI and the DOJ under Barack Obama used a fabricated dossier. They used fabricated evidence as the underlying legal rationale for the surveillance of the Republican candidate for president's campaign. This makes Watergate look like small potatoes. This is an abuse of power that involves the actual function and authority of government to spy on Donald Trump and his campaign. And that narrative is one that the mainstream media would like to cover up, thanks to you and Sean Hannity and Tucker Carlson and a handful of other courageous journalists. We're getting the facts, and they would like to obscure those facts with this strange narrative. Now, Margaret Carlson had a really weird piece, which I wrote a long rejoinder to, which I'll publish today, in which she claims that when he became the nominee, Donald Trump became a public official. I doubt that. And that since he may have received the WikiLeaks emails regarding Hillary Clinton, I don't know that that's true. He certainly didn't get them from me. I can honestly tell you, I've never discussed WikiLeaks or Assange or the Hillary Clinton's missing emails with Donald Trump, not before, during, or after the campaign. So I don't know on what he based his public call for Russia to release the emails if they had them. Clearly sarcasm that drove the mainstream media insane.
Mm-hmm. Meanwhile, I think your point about distraction is so apt, given what we found out yesterday, which I went into pretty deep detail on last night, but the regular, lamestream media really didn't, that this Australian diplomat, pals with the Clintons, ends up being the guy who gives the tip to the FBI about George Papadopoulos, who runs, he meets with them in this bar in London, and then he goes to the FBI and he says, "Oh, this looks like the Russians are trying to, muck around with the emails of Podesta and the DNC," and he just happens to be the guy that arranged $25 million grant to the Clinton Foundation for AIDS research and so forth. And there's some questions about whether the grant was properly administered, but nevertheless, another Clinton connection to this Russia investigation that, again, the lamestream media doesn't want to talk about.
Well, based on everything I've read, neither Carter Page nor Papadopoulos had any authority in the Trump campaign. They were volunteers on a multi-100-member foreign policy advisory panel that really, was more for a press release than any other purpose. So trying to dress them up as top Trump advisors is disingenuous, to say the least. But it appeared to me that it was Papadopoulos urging the campaign to get in touch with the Russians, advice that was systematically ignored and turned aside. So that whole narrative is strange. What I really don't understand is why the president, instead of tweeting Jeff Sessions that he's unhappy, doesn't just fire him. He is clearly not committed to the rule of law. We know that Rod Rosenstein, the de facto Attorney General, is among those who approved the use of the phony dossier as an underlying rationale for the surveillance of the Trump campaign. It's time for an Attorney General who's committed to the rule of law. It's time for a special counsel who will look into Uranium One, perhaps the largest treasonous financial crime in American history, one that involves Mr. Mueller, Mr. Comey, Mr. McCabe, and Mr. Rosenstein himself.
Well, and again, the initial choice, and I've spoken about this so often, just indulge me for a second, Roger. The choice of this Rod Rosenstein to be the number 2 to Jeff Sessions will go down as one of the, many bad decisions, but a potentially catastrophic decision for this administration. Let me sum it up in 2 words: Reince Priebus. Reince Priebus. That's where he came from. That's who pushed his appointment. You'll love this. He had a letter of recommendation from Elijah Cummings. Oh my God.
To me, that would exempt you from an appointment in the Trump administration. So that's a question for Mr. Priebus, why he would advance the candidacy of Rod Rosenstein. This guy's a bad actor, and he has a serious conflict of interest in the fact that he appointed Mueller at no one's direction, on his own volition. There was no crime to investigate. Now Mueller's out trying to find a crime. And he again, is complicit in the use of the phony dossier himself. Time for this guy to go.
By the way, there was one other thing that Sam Nunberg said to Ari Melber of MSNBC. Let's listen.
They're trying to set up a perjury case against Roger Stone, and I'm not going to have it. Roger's my mentor. Roger is like family to me, and I'm not going to do it. I'm not going to do it. And Roger did not talk. Roger may have lied about it,
let me be
but
very
Roger
clear.
did not
Are you basing that view that they're going for
on the
Roger,
questions
they're
I got.
trying to use you to get to Roger, based on a theory or based on the questions they asked you?
Based on the questions they asked me. I have no idea in advance what they wanted for the grand jury. But what they did tell me was I wasn't going to be a subject or target, and I was going to get the same kind of immunity. But they wanted something.
What was your reaction to that when you heard
Well,
that?
I addressed that in the first 5 minutes here.
Yeah.
They evidently asked Sam whether I met with Julian Assange. The answer, quite simply, is no. Everything. I
So the
answered all these
perjury
questions.
idea went right to that, but you addressed that in your meetings on Capitol Hill. You already addressed that long ago.
I did, and I turned over to the
Right.
House Intelligence Committee the rather scant exchange between myself and WikiLeaks, which exonerates me, proves that I had no advanced knowledge of the WikiLeaks disclosures. Only in this atmosphere could a text message, or in this case a direct message, which was truncated, by the way, and fabricated at the bottom, it says, when the Atlantic published at the bottom, it says, created by the Atlantic Art Department, which is kind of humorous in itself.
Mm-hmm.
But only in this atmosphere could a document surface that exonerates you, and the liberals in the mainstream media and their Democratic handmaiden friends say, aha. It's Kafka-esque.
Roger, before we let you go, I have to get your take on the potential real sign of progress with North Korea. Donald Trump was laughed at, ridiculed, maligned. They called him crazy. He was going to blow up the world. Joe Scarborough, blowhard extraordinaire, going on and on about Trump, got to remove him from office, nukes, North Korea, Rocket Man. Now it looks like, I guess some of that might have actually borne some fruit here. We might be harvesting some fruit in North Korea because of what Donald Trump did. And meanwhile, Paul Krugman has a poorly timed op-ed today in the New York Times about the old man with nukes, meaning Trump.
Yeah, this is a shrewd use of what Richard Nixon and Henry Kissinger called the madman theory, where you rattle the saber and they take you seriously, and therefore they come to the table. Unlike Barack Obama, who drew a line in the sand and then stood back helplessly while our adversary stepped over it, Donald Trump means business. And when he threatened the North Koreans, I think they got the message. It's why they're at the table. Do you think they'd be at the table if they thought he was a marshmallow? The answer is no.
Roger Stone, always so great to have you on. Thank you so much for joining us today.
We will make America great again.